Okay, to start off my 30 Days of Cage, I watched Raising Arizona, which I hadn't actually seen in quite a long time. This is what I call early period Coen brothers, just before they hit the big time. You can draw a line from this movie to Big Lebowski to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? This movie's so much fun. The action is so dynamic. You could see the influence of the Coen brothers' close friend, Sam Raimi. The Coens are master storytellers. They're always showing interesting people saying interesting things. A few of their characters are more interesting than H.I. McDonough. Nicolas Cage is just incredible in this role. He just crafts this completely realized person, nervous tics and habits. He tucks his shirt on when he answers the door. And of course, Holly Hunter, John Goodman, and the rest of the cast are amazing as well. This is a good one to start off with. I hadn't seen it in many, many years. And if you want to watch it, it's available to stream on Disney+. Which Nicolas Cage movie should I watch next? Let me know in the comments below. See you at the movies. Film number 2 of my 30 Days of Cage was Con Air, which I always thought of as Cage's sellout film. He made this one after winning his Oscar. But I thoroughly enjoyed going to see this movie in the theater when it came out. I mean, it is a fun summer blockbuster after all. But watching it back now, I find I spend as much time making fun of it as I do actually enjoying it. I mean, you have to admit, some of this dialogue is ridiculous, and some of these situations are completely unrealistic. Even for Jerry Bruckheimer. What's really on display here are Cage's incredible action skills. I'd never seen him do this type of stunt work, this type of fighting work. It really was the first time for him. And the action scenes are intense as well, but you just have to laugh at some of this ridiculousness. Like a fire truck doesn't have water in it. That's like a fact. Anyway, let me know what you think of Con Air and which Nicolas Cage movie should I watch next. See you at the movies. Day 2 of 30 Days of Cage was Honeymoon in Vegas, which is the first Nicolas Cage movie I ever saw. At least the first one I remember being a Nicolas Cage movie. And I was a little worried revisiting this one as the premise involves Nicolas Cage losing a poker game to James Caan and then giving his girlfriend away for the weekend. Doesn't seem like it would hold up by today's standards. But this movie's really just about a young couple being stupid. And hey, I've been there. We all have. For me, this movie really marks Cage honing in on his crazy persona, the unpredictable yelling and screaming, and that dry tone we love so much. He really does carry most of the comedy in this movie because the other side of the story is pretty boring and creepy. You really don't want Sarah Jessica Parker to end up with James Caan. Well, yeah, Pat Morita's in this. He's really funny. It's a fun movie. I had a blast watching it. It wasn't available on streaming anywhere, so I had to rent it like a chump, but that's my own fault for not owning it on DVD. Which Nicolas Cage movie should I watch next? See you at the movies. Film 4 in my 30 Days of Cage was The Color Out of Space, one of Nicolas Cage's newer films that I hadn't actually seen yet. And wow, this is a weird one, and it gets pretty gruesome as well. It is not for the squeamish. But what an experience. I've never seen anything quite like this. Cage is incredible. I was invested in all of these performances, and the visuals of this are just unreal. And it kind of takes you by surprise. The first half of the movie feels pretty normal, albeit with a creepy vibe. But things get real weird real fast, and Cage, of course, follows suit. He is both a perfectly normal dad in this and perfectly not normal in this role. I honestly couldn't imagine anyone else doing this. And while I'm still working some of this story out in my head, I would definitely recommend this film to anyone who loves horror or Lovecraft. Let me know which movie you think I should watch next for my 30 Days of Cage. Let me know what you think of this film if you've seen it already. And we'll see you at the movies. Day 5 was The Rock, which is my favorite Nicolas Cage action movie. I mean, the cast is just incredible. Sean Connery, Ed Harris, John Spencer, David Morse, the list goes on. Any one of these guys has a huge IMDb page. I think this is a very compelling story that's still relevant today. And I actually think this is Michael Bay's second best movie. As far as Cage himself goes, he was excellent. This was his first big action movie, and he wears it well. This script has so many good lines, and Cage gets to let a little bit of the rage out. I mean, I think Stanley Goodspeed is one of the great movie action heroes. He's smart, he's confident when he needs to be, and he's determined to defuse those rockets. I also like that the premise of this movie is basically the British government giving up James Bond and letting him rot in prison for the rest of his life. It's just an amazing movie on so many levels. Let me know what your favorite line is from this movie. Mine is, of course, "You're the Rocket Man." See you at the movies. The sixth film of my 30 Days of Cage was Firebirds, which is one we owned on VHS when I was a kid. My dad loved this movie. And why wouldn't he? This movie is Top Gun with helicopters. It's not trying to hide what it is and actually is pretty closely matching Top Gun, almost shot for shot in some cases. Cage's performance is a bit uneven in this. It starts out pretty bland and unemotional, but then quickly warms up once he starts training with Tommy Lee Jones, who is really awesome. He is doing all the great things Tommy Lee Jones does, swearing and yelling in a Southern accent. Cage does get to let the rage out every once in a while. The flight simulator scene in particular is amazing. And there's also a scene in which he drives around blindfolded with underwear on his head. That's also very entertaining. My only real problem with this film is the editing and continuity. Just don't pay attention to Sean Young's helmet during the final battle. If you've seen this movie, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. And if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. I have no idea where it's streaming. I still own it on VHS. See you at the movies. On day 7, I watched National Treasure, Book of Secrets, which I thought I hadn't seen yet, but turns out I already had. It's just so similar to the first one that I confused them. I'm generally not a fan of these movies. I mean, they're fun, they're slick, action movies, but I'm not really into American history that much. So when I watch this, I enjoy the set pieces, I enjoy the action, I enjoy the dialogue and the witty banter, but it just doesn't come together for me as a great movie. I'm also not thrilled that they're searching for some indigenous treasure in this movie and there's not one indigenous person cast in it. That's a bit of a problem. But then again, historical accuracy isn't really what National Treasure is all about. It's all about treasure hunting, solving puzzles, figuring out ancient gadgets. It's like Goonies for grown-ups. The cast is incredible, although I'm not a fan of them casting Bruce Greenwood, a Canadian, to play the American president. I'm glad this series is over. It was fun while it lasted, but Cage has to move on to other things. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know what you think of the National Treasure series and which Nicolas Cage movie should I watch next? See you at the movies. The 8th film of my 30 Days of Cage was appropriately 8mm. I just got that. I didn't know if that was planned or... Anyway, this movie came out when I worked at Blockbuster Video, and this guy I worked with gave me the nickname Machine after a character in this movie. And if you've seen this film, you know that I didn't like being called Machine, but anyway, he did that for a few months and then forgot about it. But I didn't, and I always associated that experience with this movie, so I probably haven't seen it since it came out in 1999. And I have to say, this is a solid suspense thriller, guys. Cage is excellent as a private detective torn between his family and just a horrifying case, which becomes more and more horrifying as it goes. The supporting cast is again excellent. James Gandolfini, Peter Stormare, Catherine Keener. I think Cage picks his movies based on who he's going to work with because he just works with awesome people. Yeah, if you're in the mood for something dark, this would be a great choice. And let me know where you would like me to go next. See you at the movies. Film 9 was Primal, which I'd never heard of. I just randomly found it on Netflix, and it was surprisingly good. I mean, it's a low-budget thriller. The CGI Jaguar is suspect at times, but I'd rather they use that than try to use a real Jaguar. This movie blends a bunch of genres: action, horror, wildlife documentary. Just kidding. It's actually a solid script, decent performances all around. One thing I'm starting to notice about Cage's roles is that he's always really good at what he does, despite any character defects he may have. Frank Walsh, for example, is a complete asshole, but he knows animals and he can hunt, even on a freighter in the middle of the ocean. I think Primal is incredibly underrated. It's a quick 95 minutes on Netflix, and I think I'll have a good time watching it. I did. If you have seen it, I'd love to know what you think. It got slagged by critics, but hey, what do they know? Keep the suggestions coming, guys. You're giving me so many great ideas for this marathon. See you at the movies. Film 10 was The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which I'm surprised I'd never seen before, because I love Jay Baruchel. He's a Canadian treasure. He's all kinds of adorable awkwardness in this movie, and I think he's hilarious. Cage is good as well, and honestly, this was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It's a well-made film, imaginative with good special effects. I think there are a few reasons why this never became a franchise. It might be a little too close to Harry Potter. It might be because the magic system is just too damn vague. Like, how does this all work anyway? Maybe we had too many of these fantastical coming-of-age stories and the public was just done with it. But on its own, The Sorcerer's Apprentice is a great modern fantasy, and I'd wish we'd gotten a few more of these movies. 13-year-old me would have loved this, so I imagine there's quite a few of you out there who do as well. If you've never seen it, it's available to stream on Disney+. If you have seen it, let me know what you think in the comments below. And of course, let me know which Nicolas Cage movie you think I should watch next. See you at the movies. Film 11 was Valley Girl, going all the way back to the beginning of Nick's career. And I'm ashamed to admit that I'd never seen this movie before. I mean, I thought I had, but I guess I just somehow missed it. Because I absolutely would have remembered this incredible film. It's just this snapshot of a very specific time and place. The fashion, the slang, the music. I'm a bit too young to have experienced this myself, but I still feel nostalgia for it. I realize now how many other movies Valley Girl has influenced. Say Anything, Can't Hardly Wait, even Superbad borrow from this. And that's not a bad thing. This isn't my new favorite Nicolas Cage movie, although that might change before the end of this month. It's just so well shot, and Cage has this raw energy. It's just amazing. Could it be that Nicolas Cage peaked with his first starring role? No, I don't think so, but I do think this is a perfect movie. And if you haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a while, I highly recommend it. As always, let me know which Cage movie I should add to my list. See you at the movies. To celebrate his new film, I'm watching 30 Nicolas Cage movies in 30 days. And last night I decided to watch his latest movie, Pig, which is a beautifully told story and unlike anything else Cage has done before. I don't even want to say too much about the plot other than it's very compelling and it goes in a completely unexpected direction. I tried to go into this pretty cold and I think that made my experience better. Again, this is Cage creating a fully formed, very complex person, and he is just incredible. This is another Oscar-worthy performance from him. I think Nicolas Cage is out to explore all of humanity through his roles, and Robin Feld is just another example of that. And of course, the rest of the cast is excellent as well. I feel like Alex Wolff must have the best agent in Hollywood. He's showing up in everything these days. As always, if you've seen this film, let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you haven't, I highly recommend it. I watched it on Crave in Canada. See you at the movies. For film 13, I revisited Cage's superhero franchise, Ghost Rider, which as far as mid-aughts comic book movies go, isn't all that bad. I mean, sure, they could have taken a few more passes at that script, and Nick's haircut is truly, truly awful. But other than that, this is pretty good. You have to remember, this is before the MCU. These movies were held to a much lower standard, and I think Ghost Rider exceeds that standard. It's funny, it has lots of action, it moves along well, and I think it has a satisfying ending. Johnny Blaze has all the awesome eccentricities of any Nicolas Cage character. He spends his time watching old TV reruns and listening to the Carpenters. I also love the inclusion of Peter Fonda as Mephistopheles. That detail was not lost on the Easy Rider fan in me. And overall, I think this movie is a lot of fun. It is very much of its time, but hey, that's okay. It gives it charm. What do you think? Shall we watch the sequel? See you at the movies. Film 14 was Adaptation, and I remember now why I skipped this one the first time around. It's Oscar bait. I don't generally love that about it. We can get into it in the comments if you want. And I tell you, the first half of this movie sucked the life out of me. It's a very awkward look into Charlie Kaufman's brain. And while it is fascinating to watch, it's definitely a place I do not want to go again. Cage is just wonderful in his portrayal of Kaufman and his twin brother. The best scenes in this movie are just Cage performing with himself. I honestly forgot it was the same person. It seems like they were somehow able to clone Cage. He plays both brothers so well and so differently. The second half of this movie is an Academy Award nominated screenplay and proof that the old writing formulas and storytelling tricks actually work. I love the second half of this movie, and I love that Adaptation calls itself out on all its own sins. I probably won't come back to this, but it is a key performance for the books. See you at the movies. On day 15, I watched Captain Corelli's Mandolin, which is actually a solid war drama, very well made with some intense battle sequences. Cage does an Italian accent in this one, so you're going to have to get over that pretty quickly. But his performance is very genuine, and I hear he actually learned how to play the mandolin for this role. The best part of this movie is absolutely John Hurt, who plays Penelope Cruz's father. He has all the best lines. But unfortunately, the chemistry between Cage and Penelope Cruz is lacking. I know they're supposed to be in love. I just don't know why. And hey, did you know Christian Bale is in this movie? I had no idea. He's totally in it. This is an interesting story about a part of the war I'm not very familiar with. So if you haven't seen it, it is worth watching. But feel free to skip it if you're not into the lovey-dovey stuff. I've heard there's a joke about this movie or about Nicolas Cage in general on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so maybe you might want to watch it for that reason. And if you have seen this movie, of course, as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. See you at the movies. Film 16, Season of the Witch, was again a lot better than I was expecting. It's Cage in medieval times with Ron Perlman as his BFF and Klaus from Umbrella Academy tagging along. This is a well-structured quest movie with a little exorcist thrown in for good measure. The ending gets a bit CGI monstery for my liking, and it is confusing, but that's not uncommon for a Hollywood movie of this time. I like that nobody tries to do an English accent here. They just play it straight. And I like the series of challenges this group must overcome in order to complete their quest. It's an entertaining film. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, you'll see that this movie got absolutely slagged by critics at like an 11% or something like that. I think this is all about context and expectations. If this movie was hyped up big before its release, yeah, I could see how it would be a letdown. But watching it more than a decade later on Netflix, I think it's pretty good. But what do you think? If you've seen this movie, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. See you at the movies. All right, listen, I watched Left Behind as my 17th Nicolas Cage movie because I'd heard it was one of the worst movies he's ever made. And yeah, it's pretty freaking bad. This is what I like to call a Christian flick. You know, really heavy on the pro-God messaging, Jesus this and scripture that. It's not really for me. Listen, I believe in religious freedom as long as you don't hurt anybody. And while Left Behind doesn't necessarily hurt anybody, it will take away 1 hour and 50 minutes of your life. It's a disaster movie about the rapture with a very heavy-handed Christian message. Like, what happened to the billions of non-Christians around the world? I guess life as usual for them. I'm sorry, I'm just bitter Cage had to make this. He's putting in an honest day's work. But Left Behind is not worth your time. I say skip it. And I want to know what you think Nicolas Cage's worst movie is. For me, this is it. This is the worst one I've seen this month. See you at the movies. Film 18 was Into the Spider-Verse, which my kids chose as their favorite Nicolas Cage movie. And I don't doubt it. They absolutely love this movie and animation as a whole because of it. I know he's just a small part of it, but I like to think Nicolas Cage adds awesomeness to this movie. Spider-Man Noir is one of the great Cage characters. He's quirky, dark, and kicks ass. I think we'd all love to see him get his own movie, no? This film means so much to my kids, and I love it because of that. It has inspired them to create art and learn more about animation. The pure creativity on display here is impossible for them to ignore. I already know you guys love this movie too, so tell me your favorite Spider-Verse line. Mine is, of course,
I'm taking this cube thing with me. I don't understand it, but I will.
See you at the movies. Film 19 was David Lynch's Wild at Heart. Now, I said I'd been rewatching Twin Peaks, and that put me in the perfect mood for this. Although this has much more sex and violence than Twin Peaks, but fewer donuts. I would call this Lynch's great wild couple movie. Cage and Laura Dern are just electric together. You can absolutely feel their passion for each other. And the supporting cast is incredible. This may be Willem Dafoe's best character. Just saying. I've noticed that love is a recurring theme in Cage's films, and this is a great love story told by David Lynch, one of cinema's greatest storytellers. My question for you is, what's your favorite David Lynch film? Mine is probably Eraserhead. See you at the movies. My 20th Nicolas Cage movie was City of Angels, which started out a lot better than I remembered. It's an interesting look at the way modern angels could work, although the trench coats give off a bit of a creepy stalker vibe, as does all the creepy stalking these guys do. It's a neat idea, but it isn't executed very well. This movie is slow, it has poor character development, and it ultimately ends really badly. Like, I can take some enjoyment from the well-crafted shots and the killer 90s soundtrack, but in short, the ending sucks. I'm just going to tell you, I don't care. Spoilers for a 24-year-old movie. So Nicolas Cage is an angel, falls in love with Meg Ryan, and because he falls in love with her, he becomes human. It's really weird and stupid the way it happens. But after he becomes human, she randomly dies in a car crash, and he must live alone the rest of his life. And he goes swimming. It's so stupid. See you at the movies. On day 21, I watched Willy's Wonderland. And I have to be honest here, guys, I didn't really like this one very much. It's all style and no substance. I mean, it's fun and all to watch Nicolas Cage rip apart these FNAF knockoffs with his bare hands. Does he have to do it in silence? He has no lines in the entire movie, and while I can appreciate his choice to play a character like this, we should be given a reason for him not speaking at the beginning, so I'm not wondering throughout the entire film if he's finally going to say something. I don't like this attempt at the mysterious drifter character. There's leaving things to the imagination, but this is just not bothering to come up with a backstory. We have no clues to this character's motivations or how he became so good at ripping apart animatronics. There is one glimmer of greatness in the pinball scene towards the end, and I do generally like the look and feel of this movie. I know I say this a lot, but if they'd spend more time on that script, developed the backstory, and written better side characters, this could have been a good movie. What do you think? Agree? Disagree? Well, let me know in the comments below. See the movies. Cage film 22 was Leaving Las Vegas, which of course he won the Oscar for. Now, I thought this was going to be difficult for me to watch because my father was an alcoholic and I thought this would bring back a lot of bad memories for me, but it actually didn't. Alcoholism is different for different people, and in this film, Cage portrays somebody who's just given up completely and has embraced the one thing that gives him joy. Now, of course, he meets Elizabeth Shue, who does also bring him joy in a different way. And really what this movie is about the power of love. It shows that love, the feeling of being in love with someone, is so powerful, it can counteract any other negative feeling. Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Shue are excellent together. You can really feel their chemistry. And I think she should have won an Oscar as well, to be honest. Ultimately, this is a very beautiful, very sad movie. It is another Cage love story. He really loves love stories. And that's fine by me because I love watching them. See you at the movies. Cage movie 23 was Windtalkers, which I chose because I love Adam Beach. He grew up in the same city as me and he's still beloved here. There's a giant mural of him on Ellis Avenue. And Windtalkers is in that mural because it was his big budget debut. And I have to say, it's a killer World War II movie. Killer being the operative word here. There are a lot of deaths and some of them being pretty graphic. It is John Woo after all. And of course, that comes with all the zooms, pans, and whips that you would expect in a John Woo film. Cage is excellent as usual, but it's Beach who steals the show here. I'm no expert, but he seems to have deeply researched Navajo culture for the role. And I have to believe he had some input into a scene about mission schools in Arizona, which is essentially the same as residential schools were here in Canada. That was a horrible thing anywhere that had happened. This is an excellent war movie. Tons of explosions, action, and it's a compelling story and true, kind of. See you at the movies. On day 24, I watched Moonstruck, and I have to say I completely forgot about how good this movie was. I mean, this is one of the great American romantic comedies, beautifully directed by Norman Jewison. Cher is excellent in this. She's so authentic and interesting. It's a well-deserved Oscar for her. And Cage just owns every scene he's in. You can see the brilliance that was to come. But honestly, I think the real stars here are the entire supporting cast. Every one of them just delightful. I can't help but be reminded of other movies like My Big Fat Greek Wedding that take a lot from this. Moonstruck is a lovely little slice of life comedy, a brilliantly written story in which you care about all the characters, and I love how it ends for everybody. Next time you're in the mood for a romantic comedy, I would absolutely recommend this. And let me know while we're on the subject, what's your favorite Cher movie? For me, this might be it. See you at the movies. All right, finally, my 25th Cage film was Face Off, which I was a little afraid to revisit because, let's face it, on its face, its premise is ridiculous. Okay, I'll stop with the puns. This is still an amazing John Woo action flick. It's completely unrealistic, yet also it feels somehow logical. Like if you could actually switch faces with a terrorist for hire in order to find out from his brother in a prison with magnetic boots where the bomb is that is set to go off and kill everyone in Los Angeles, this is how you would do it. This movie is so much fun. It doesn't matter that neither Travolta nor Cage are great at playing each other, although I'd argue Cage is better. All they have to do here is personify good and evil, and they both do that very well. I was pleasantly surprised again to see Canadian treasurer Colm Feore in this one. He was also in City of Angels. And even though it clocks in at 2 hours, 15 minutes, this movie moves along well. And you should watch it if you haven't seen it in a while. See you at the movies. I chose to watch Knowing for film 26 because I honestly couldn't remember if I'd seen it or not. And I think this is a pretty good movie, much better than I was expecting. It's an interesting premise that ropes you in right away, although this movie does drag a bit in the opening act. And it kind of shifts genres a few times. There's a lot going on here. I'm almost too much at times. Like, I don't think we need the whole Men in Black conspiracy thing. The finding a list of numbers in a time capsule predicting every major disaster over the course of 50 years is interesting enough of a premise. I actually think this would make a great series. Here's the pitch. He gets the list a few years earlier, so he has a chance to stop more of the tragedies before they happen. One every episode. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. Call me Netflix. The big problem with this film is the ending. It is a bit too Deus Ex Machina for me, but I still had a blast watching it. See you at the movies. Cage film 27 was Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which I know isn't technically a Cage film. He's barely in it, and he's credited as Nicolas Coppola in this one, but it is his first on-screen role, and I felt like watching it. Give me a break, because this is the greatest high school movie ever made. It defines the teenage experience for an entire generation, and I would argue for generations to come. I bet my 15-year-old could relate to a lot of these characters and their problems. This could be one of the greatest casts ever assembled. 3 future Oscar winners here, including Cage. Everyone is so good. It is another perfect movie. I will admit that age has changed the way I see this film. I do identify much more closely with Mr. Hand this time around. But Sean Penn is incredible as Spicoli. He remains one of my favorite characters ever put on film. So my question for you is, what's your favorite Spicoli quote? Mine is, gnarly. See you at the movies. Well, Cage film 28 was It Could Happen to You because I got COVID for my birthday and couldn't go to the theater. But that's okay. I was able to cuddle up on the couch with my girlfriend and watch this darling little film. It's not perfect. Some of the dialogue is very awkward. And Cage and Bridget Fonda have no romantic chemistry whatsoever. But you really want them to? I think it would be interesting to see this film remade now in a modern context. If a cop tipped a waitress half his lottery winnings these days, you know that shit's going viral, because this movie is also about the horrible parts about being a minor celebrity, the press, the fans, being recognized in public. It's not all fun and games. I was pleasantly surprised at Fonda. She creates a very cutely detailed character, giving Meg Ryan a run for her money. And Cage is fine. I think he was going for kind of a Tom Hanks-ish, bumbling, lovable guy, but it doesn't really suit him. It's not a memorable Cage film, but if you happen to come across this on a streaming service, I say give it a watch. I think you'll enjoy it. See you at the movies. My penultimate Cage film was Gone in 60 Seconds, which I wasn't going to watch, but so many of you recommended it, I decided to give it another shot. And it is a decent movie. I think what I don't like about it is its formulaic nature. It follows every trope in every Jerry Bruckheimer ensemble action movie ever made, and I'm tired of it. And I think by the time this movie came out, audiences were getting tired of it as well. But once I looked past that, I can see good performances, some great lines, a few weird Cage moments, and ultimately an entertaining 2 hours. Well, hour and a half. It takes a bit for things to get moving. I also forget this is a remake of a 1974 movie, which I've never seen, but is also probably full of cheesy movie tropes as well. So I gotta cut this one some slack. The big chase scene at the end is a lot of fun, and the ensemble cast really works. These are all great actors doing a great job. All right, now I'm off to see my final Cage film, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I'll post my video about that tomorrow. See you at the movies. My final Cage film was, of course, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which was the perfect way to end my 30 Days of Cage movie month. I love this movie. It's a clever, self-aware celebration of the man's work. There are so many references to his past movies. I'm so glad I spent the last month watching them. Nick plays the quote-unquote failed actor version of himself very well. This is who you would imagine Nicolas Cage could be based on his career, sort of an alternate universe version of him. And of course, Pedro Pascal is brilliant. I just continue to fall more deeply in love with this man every time I see him. This movie is hilarious. I haven't laughed this hard in the theater in a long time. Just brilliant. Nicolas Cage is a great actor known for making bad movies, but this is one of his best. I'll definitely be going to see it again, and you should too. Get out to the theater if you haven't in a while. It'll be a blast. That's going to do it for my 30 Days of Cage. Thank you guys so much for watching these videos. It was a blast. See you at the movies.